What up, guys? What up? What up? I am Lou. Alright, guys, so today we're going to be talking about Python SharePoint API, right? So we're going to be working with a new package. So I have made other videos in the past. You may find videos that I have made. This is maybe like 2 years ago, which pretty much was Python connecting to a SharePoint site to download documents, right? Like download files or upload files. So the package that I used in those videos was SharePoint. So this video is gonna be more so focused on another package. The other package is called Office 365 API. Now I've been playing around with it, doing some testing on it, and I actually like it a lot. It has a lot. It's very feature rich, and so I kind of decide I'm gonna do a multi-part video. It's gonna be probably a good 5-6 videos, maybe even more, but at least 5-6 videos, and it's gonna be all related to this Office 365 API package. And one video, which the video we're making today, is gonna be downloaded files from SharePoint. Again, I have a video already related to that, but I'm using a different package. Okay, so we're gonna kind of walk through the process of getting that configured, getting everything set up, and then on top of that, there are some benefits with this package, and I'll kind of explain in the video why it's probably more, I would say, better than SharePoint. And I'm gonna give a good use case, for that throughout the video. But nevertheless, guys, there are going to be many more videos related to this. So if you're interested on using Python to interact with SharePoint, maybe it's to check the version of files, maybe it's to download files, to upload files, whatever, right? I'm going to be making list, SharePoint list, things of that nature. I'm going to be making a few videos, but it's going to be a multi-part series. So I'm going to make this. It's going to be called part 1, and it's going to be downloading SharePoint files. Part 2 will probably be uploading SharePoint files. Part 3 would be, interacting with a SharePoint list or downloading SharePoint list or whatever. The list goes on and on. There'll be, a lot of different features when it related to SharePoint. In this case, it will be related to SharePoint specifically. And all of this will be on my GitHub account. So go ahead and check the link out on my GitHub account, and you can get the code from there. Hey guys, before we get started, if you could give me a like, give me a follow, guys, man, I really, really appreciate it, man. Give me a like, give me a follow, and now let's get started. Alright guys, so this is a fresh project, and we're going to be adding on to it as well. It will make things a lot easier as well. So when people, right now, the source code for some of the other videos that I have made, they're kind of scattered on different repos. This will be all in one repo. Plus, things have kind of changed from the way I coded, from the code that I wrote 2-3 years ago, because I think, the video probably even goes as far back, almost 3 years back. It's slightly different. So this is going to kind of start fresh. So I'm in my folder already. Again, you can tell it's brand new. It's empty, nothing in there. It's like always, guys, like always, create a virtual environment. Always, man. Don't ever just start installing third-party packages in your current environment. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So it'll be Python 3-m v env, and I'm going to call this env. Oops, my bad. It's Python, not Python 3, just Python. I was working on my Mac earlier, and on my Mac, I had to use Python 3, which is why I think I'm just, again, that's kind of the little nuances when you're bouncing from one operating system, one machine to another machine, because, yeah, either way. But alright, cool. So now that I have that, let's go ahead and activate it. Source, env, scripts. Again, remember, guys, those of you who are new, if you're on Mac or Linux, it will be bin. In my case, I'm doing this on Windows, so it'll be scripts, activate. So now that I have that activated, there's only one package that we're going to need for this project. So let's go ahead and get that package. In this case, let's go to the website. I just want to show y'all real quick. So let me go to the website. So it will be Python Office 365 REST Python client. It's what it's called. There it goes. So this is it right here. And so you know what? This is actually not the latest. It says 2.20. That's not the latest. I believe the latest is 2.310, 13 maybe, something like that. He may have it over here. What did he have? There it goes. This is the latest version, which was actually updated 26 days ago. So it is being maintained. The package, which is always a good thing, right? It's always scary when you're dealing with a package that have not been maintained in years. Those packages, I would most likely stay away unless it's dealing with some kind of issue that's very archaic and there's no need, or there haven't been a need to update throughout the years. But besides that, I will kind of stay away from it. But either way, guys, at least that kind of gives you some insight to the package. Let's go ahead and get this installed. So it will be pip install Office 365 REST Python client. It's a long ass name, but not sure what he was thinking about when generating that name. All right, cool. So now that we have that package installed, now let's get started. So we have our virtual environment. We're gonna create 2 files, right? Or 3 files really. So let's just go ahead and get our files configured. One of the files is going to be, I'm gonna call it download, downloads, download.py, right? So this download.py is going to show like on provide the code on how to download it, pretty much. The other file we're going to create, we're going to call this Office 365 underscore Office 365 API. So let's call it that, Office 365 API. Cool. Then our third file is going to be called .env. So we're going to be setting some variables that we're going to want to use throughout the application, throughout the process. So that's where this comes in. If you're not familiar with environment and variables, then you're going to get familiar with it in this video, because we're going to be using it. We're going to be talking about it. All right. So let's go ahead and let's put this code together. So this file is going to have we're going to create a class, and then we're going to create functions to do specific tasks, to authenticate, to download file, upload file, all of that stuff. But again, right now we're only going to pretty much add the pieces that we need, which is going to be to download. So let's go ahead and bring in certain packages. So one thing that we're going to bring in is going to be in order to handle our environment variables. So go ahead and import. Did I spell it wrong? Oh, nope. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to bring in is going to be from Office 365 .SharePoint .client context import client context. So this is going to be we're going to be use the class to authenticate. So that's why we're bringing that in. So the next one that we're going to bring in will be Office 365 runtime auth, then user credentials. Let me try to think. Do we? I don't know. I don't think. Oh, you know what? We do need this. Yes, we do. and I'll show, we'll kind of walk through that. But there they user credentials, import, and what is it called? User credentials. So this is needed part of the authentication to create our to authenticate with credentials, because you could authenticate with token or credentials. In this case, it will be credentials. So next will be Office 365, SharePoint, files, file.import file. So again, we're dealing with files here because we're dealing with SharePoint files. We're bringing in the file class for that. Now again, I'll explain on how that would work and all that in a minute as we kind of go through the process. All right, so now that we have that, I'm gonna create an object called env, and then this is going to bring in we're gonna end up bringing in the env class. So see, now we're utilizing it over here, and we're bringing in the env class. Why do I have these squiggly lines? What am I? Import env cannot be resolved. Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm getting that, but let's see. All right, cool. So the next thing that we're gonna do is let's go ahead and set our inside this class we have a read env method. Now what this is doing by default is looking inside the same root directory where you're working at, which in this case would be this file. It's looking inside this folder, and it's looking for a .env file. So you could tell I have this .env file right here, and it's looking for it because it wants to read all the variables and bring them in. And as it brings them in, it gets utilized throughout the application. So that's pretty much what that's doing. So what we're gonna need is we're gonna need to, from this file, this .env, there are gonna be 5 variables that we need to set. So let's go ahead and set them now, right? Let me kind of show you how that looks. So one of them is going to be called SharePoint user. You know what it's called? Is SharePoint email, right? That's really what it is. So it'll be equals double quotes, and then again it'll be the email, whatever email you're dealing with. SharePoint password. What else? SharePoint URL site. SharePoint site name, and then it will be SharePoint doc library. All right, so again, this SharePoint email is going to be your Office 365 email account, right? So if you're, whatever your email account is that you log into your SharePoint site, that's pretty much what that is. And of course, then your password is same thing, right? Your password for your Office 365 account. Now this SharePoint URL site and site name, let's kind of walk through that, because I want to make sure that you understand what this is and where it's, on like the format of it, right? So that's the piece that I really want to make sure that you understand. So let me go ahead and open up Office, my SharePoint. All right, so this is one of my sites that I have. It's called Development, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on it. So as you could tell, see up here on top where I have my subdomain, then I have my domain, which is SharePoint.com, and then it's sites development. This right here is considered over here my URL site, right? So it's not just the URL for SharePoint, it's the actual site URL, right? Because again, this name changes if you're dealing with different sites. So you want to specify the right site that we're going to be downloading files from. That's what that is. This piece here where it says site name, this is going to be how, you know, what it says, site name. This is our site name right here. So go ahead and copy your site name, then put a / at the end. What else? So, well, you know what? Let's not put /. We could remove it. We're gonna exclude /. That's fine. So we don't need it. That's our name, and then we have our what's called doc library. So this piece here, it could be a little bit tricky, but hopefully it makes sense. So when you go to SharePoint, you have your documents folder on the left side, right? So your documents folder, this is where you could have folders and subfolders and so on and so on. Well, we don't want to specify the actual folder. Yeah, we want this folder here to be dynamic. See how I have two folders, 2020 and then 2022? We're building our script where it's dynamic, where these are going to be arguments that we're going to pass in to know which folder in SharePoint we want to download files to. We don't want to hard code that in. But nevertheless, going back to what do we need here? What is this? This is actually, when we click on the documents, we're pretty much trying to configure the root path, you want to call it, right, in SharePoint, where all of your files, folders will be located under. So in this case, it's not data, right? That's not what it is. But if we go to the root, even a higher level than that, it is called shared documents. See how we have shared %20, which it's a %20 pretty much represents a space for the URL. Then of course is documents. That's what's going to be our doc library. So that's what ultimately we're going to type in here. So it'll be shared space, because that's what it is. Documents / again, I guess we don't need to put for no, on this one we do need to put / all right, but again, this is where we're configuring all of our variables, right? So whenever you deploy it to your server, for example, this is not hard coded into your code. These could always get changed as needed. Maybe you're working on a different site, so you could just come into the configuration, this file, and then change it to the right site. It's things of that nature, right? So it kind of gives a little bit more control. I'll put in my email password in a few, but I just want to kind of show you this real quick. All right, so the next thing we need to do is now we're going to create, we're going to pretty much read these variables and assign them to a Python variable. So let's go ahead and do that. The first one would be username, which again it's actually email. So in this case it is, let me kind of put this to the side. It's going to be SharePoint email. The next one would be password, and this would be SharePoint password. All right, the next one is going to be SharePoint site, and this would be SharePoint URL site. Now hopefully you see the pattern, right? All of these keys are pretty much the key value on what's in the .env file, right? This is our key and this is our value in double quotes. Key value. So we need to specify the key in order to get back the value. We're assigning the value to these objects right here. That's pretty much what we're doing here, right? Again, some of the stuff that I'm saying, you know, those of you who are well experienced, you know, in programming in general are probably like, dude, we know that already. But I'm saying it more so for the people that are new. I know I do have some people that watch my video that are just starting to learn how to program, and so that's kind of the reason why some of the stuff that I may go over may seem very, very basic or very entry level, but I'm trying to do it more so to help out, to bring some understanding for the people that are brand new. SharePoint doc. So in this case, it would be SharePoint doc library. Cool. So now that we have that, let me go ahead and close this out, just so we can have more space to see better. And now what we're gonna do next is we're gonna end up creating a class, and we're gonna call our class SharePoint. And inside this class, we're gonna have a few methods. So we're gonna end up creating. The first one will be our authentication. To authenticate. So in this case, we are. Let's call it _auth. This will be self. This would be con. For connection, and then we're going to end up bringing our client context. And the first here where it says base URL, so this is where we're going to end up providing our site, SharePoint site. So it will be SharePoint site, comma. So now see where it says auth context equals none. So we are going to actually leave it as none in this example, in this case. But there is, inside this class, there's a function that's called with credentials, right? We have access token, client with user credentials and so on. But we're using the with credentials, which is username and password. Eventually, I'll be making another video where we use tokens, but in this case, we're using credentials. So now that I do that, credentials, we're going to end up, see where it says right here, credentials, user credentials. So that's what we're going to be using in here. Let me go ahead and enter, and it will be user credentials. And then this class takes in 2 arguments. The first one is username, and the second one is password. So we're passing those 2 in. Ultimately, once we pass all of that in, we'll get back our connection to the site. All right, and we need to return that. So this will be, this would be a return CONN for connection. All right, so our next function that we're going to have is going to be called get files list, right? So let's do self. And it's going to take 1 argument, folder name. So what this is doing is, since we're doing kind of like a wildcard, like, hey, we want all the files in the folder. Well, in order to know what's in there to begin with, because it's not like a normal directory where, like in Python, you could access a list of files in a directory by using like the OS files, package that's built inside Python. You can't do that in this case for SharePoint because it's in a different location. It doesn't work the same way. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna pass in a folder name, and then we're gonna access the metadata of that folder to see what is all of the file that exists in that folder. And then once we get that list, then we'll be able to iterate over one by one and download each file. That's pretty much what we're doing here. But again, to kind of separate the code and kind of have it do different things, we have, in this case, we have a function that's going to go get that data for us, the metadata for what's files belong in that folder, or in that folder, better yet. So in this case, we're going to do a connect self _auth. Again, we're calling this function over here. Since all of this already is pre-configured, it'll give us back our connection. The next thing we need to do would be target folder URL. So we need to specify which folder in SharePoint we're seeking, pretty much, right? So in our case, we're gonna end up, we gotta build that URL path. So, but we're not going to specify the full URL path. Like we're not doing the HTTPS domain subdomain.sharepoint.com, then whatever, so on and so on. We're not specifying everything. We need to specify everything from the shared document on forward, right? So again, kind of going back, if we look at the SharePoint site, it would be like shared documents. Then if I click on data, it would be data. Let's say 2022, it'll be 2022. So that would be kind of the URL, that target path that we're going to be specifying. Since we already have a lot of that set, we're going to pass. In this case, we're going to go ahead and bring this in SharePoint doc. Right, so we have that in SharePoint doc. Let me check real quick. If I look at SharePoint doc, I do got a / in here. Okay. Oh, my bad. Is this right? You know what? I don't need this. Let me remove this. I'm gonna remove that. So it'll be SharePoint doc / again, I could have done it in my environment variables, but I'd rather see it. So the next thing here would be my folder name, which again, it's part of my argument. So I'm passing this in. It's going to end up building that past my target. So now that I have that, I'm going to now specify. I'm going to call this root folder equals my connection web. Again, web is part of this client contents class. It would be called get folder by, there it goes. It will be this by URL pretty much. And then of course I'm going to specify my target folder URL. Right. So this ultimately is going to kind of think of it as specify the full URL and then concatenate the target URL, and that's why I call it root folder. It just kind of puts all of that together. And all right, so once we do that, root folder, in this case would be what, expand, and it would be files and folders. All right, then it will be get dot execute query. All right, now by doing that, we would end up accessing the data that ultimately it's an object inside that class for all the file that exists. So for my return, it will be return folder files, and that would give me back all the files that exist in that folder in SharePoint. So that's kind of what this is doing. All right. So the next function that we're going to create is going to be called, we're going to call this download file. And it will be self. We're going to specify the file name and then the folder name. All right. And then this same thing with this one. We're going to do a connect do assign our connection. Next, we're going to specify our file URL, right? So in this case, it would be /sites, and then it's going to be SharePoint site name, right? We want the SharePoint site name, and then the next thing going to be our SharePoint doc variable that we have, And then to finish it off, it's going to be, oops, folder name, and then it will be file, oops, damn it, and file name. Let's see. So now that once we have that, we're gonna pretty much get back a file object. So that's why I call it file. This is where we're using our file class from Office 365. So in this case, it will be file open, which there's a method called open binary. And this is where we're gonna, our first, under context is gonna be our connection. That's what we're passing in. Our second argument is going to be our file URL. That's, which is this guy here. We got to specify that to know which file we want to download, pretty much is what we're doing here. And then we're going to return, return that file object back. Now that file object contains many, other metadata that we're not going to use, but eventually we'll see in the process, in the other piece, we'll kind of only keep the context of it. So we'll do, I'll show you that in a few. All right, so our next method that we're going to create is going to be called download files, right? So again, this is file, this is files. So it would be self, folder name, and then what I'm going to do here, it's going to be self underscore let me see, this would be underscore file list, and this would end up calling the my bad. Yeah, it would be self underscore get file list method that I have over here, right? Now I do have to pass in a folder name, which is what I'm doing here. And ultimately this is going to give me back a list. So even though it's called download files, it's really what it's doing is giving me back a list. And then I'm going to do return, my bad, return underscore file list. So probably let me just do it this way. I don't know why I put an underscore. So ultimately we'll return back that list. You know what, just to maybe make it even reduce another line of code, let me just do it like that. And that will return that back. So we got, again, we have our class with 4 methods. One is to authenticate, get file list. Again, get file list is to be able to, since it's not a normal directory the way you would be dealing with files on a local machine or a remote machine, we need to determine what files even are in that SharePoint folder. And based on this will give us that data, then we would when we have that data, we'll be able to do an iteration and start downloading them one by one, which is where this kind of gets built and ultimately downloads of each file one by one. That's pretty much what's happening here. So now that we have this set, now let's go to our download.py file. So what we're going to do here, we're going to need to bring in that Office 365 API file, and we're going to import the SharePoint class. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2 is going to be regular expressions. I'll explain to you why we're going to bring that in. Next, we're going to bring in system, OS. I think that's it, system and OS. And then we do need to bring in from passlib import purepass, because we're going to be saving, right? As we download, we're going to need to save them somewhere. So this is going to kind of build the root pass and the file name together to be able to save it. So the next piece, we're going to have some arguments. Let me just go ahead and put these in here. So again, if you were to see my other videos, this piece is gonna be very similar to what we did before. Slightly little tweaks, but very similar. So the way we're building it is when we execute this file, we need to pass in some arguments. In this case, we have argument 1, it's file name, argument 2. So keep in mind, in Python, the starting index is 0. You can tell I'm specifying 1. Those of you who are not aware, the file name is index 0 by default. So that's why we don't ever use 0. You got to use the next one, which in this case will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, what we're gonna do, the way we're building it, I'm building it where, we got to specify the SharePoint folder starting point and subfolders. That will be an argument. You got to specify the destination. Where do you want to save these files to as you download? It could be somewhere local. It could be a network drive. Doesn't matter, but you need to specify the full root path on where you want it to save it to. Then file name. This is more if you just want to download one file. You don't want to download all the files in the folder, but you just want to download one file. If that's the case, you got to specify a file name. Then of course, file name pattern. If you, let's say you have a folder that has two different types of files, that you have sales files, and then you have another one called calls, and it's those values, the key values are in the file name. Well, you can specify I only want sales, and it would only look for file names that start with the word sales or contain the word sales, better yet, and it will download those files, right? So inside this file, we're gonna create four functions. So let's go ahead and create it. The first one that we're going to create here, it's going to be save file, right? So this is going to take in 2 arguments. So it would be file name, file name, and then it would be file object. All right. The next thing, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna build our full root path, right? Where like ultimately this is where we're gonna want to save it to. So it'll be file directory path equals pure path, and then in this case we're taking in the folder destination. So let me do this because I should have done this. Let me make these caps. I just like having these in bigger case, kind of distinguish the difference, and that's where this will come in. So this one for example is folder name, file name, file name pattern. All right, cool. So this will be folder destination, like where we want to save it to, and then of course the it would be, in this case, the file name, which is this argument that we're passing in. All right, so this is just building that string, right? Next, we're gonna do with open. In this case, it would be the file directory path, and then we're gonna do a WB, which is write binary. Even though we're dealing with text files as well, but WB would think of it as we'll be able to save text files, binary files, whatever, with this process. And we would just write, only be writing, text type files. And since we could be dealing with different types of files, it's just easier to do it this way. Then this would be write. Then this is where I will provide the file object, right? So this is where this comes in, because this is the object that we actually want to write to, this destination path that we have. So that's that. That's in order to save on where we want to save. The next thing will be get file. So we're gonna have a get file method. So this would take in get file name, and then it would take in the folder. Yep, so we'll take in the folder, All right, so next what we're gonna do here is we're gonna be file object, because we need to get back an object first. That's what we're doing. We're gonna get back an object, and then I'm gonna end up calling my SharePoint class. Then I'm gonna end up calling my download file function, which is again, it's this guy over here. And ultimately, all I'm passing in, I'm going to be passing two arguments: file name and folder. Because again, I need to tell it which file I want to download and the folder to go and fetch it from. And then of course, this is where I'm going to end up calling my save function that I created up here. Right, so I need to pass in a file name. Then of course I'm going to pass in my file object as my two arguments, and that takes care of that. This takes care of, you know, the get files. Right, we're getting it, then we're saving it, and I'm calling the save up here. The next one is going to be called get files, right, with an S. So the get files, it's only going to take back the folder only, right? Because we want all the files. We don't want just one. We want all. So we're going to be just the argument it's folder. So this would be files list, because we want to get back a list of what we want to download. So now I'm calling SharePoint class, and this would be download files. Then of course I'm going to specify my folder name. So honestly, the more I think about it, this probably should not be called download files. Yeah, I don't even need the download. This is not what I need here. And I say that more so from a sense of this is giving me the same thing. Yeah, I don't know why I got this here, man. This is not needed. Let me remove that. I don't need it. I'm actually going to call this method over here. This is what I need, which is going to be the get files list. I want the list of files pretty much, and this is a folder, so it's going to give me back a files list. Now I'm going to do an iteration, so it would be for file in files list, and then this is where again I would end up calling my get file class. I'm going to end up specifying the file name. So this is what, as we iterate over the list of all the files, in order to be able to extract the actual file name, it would be files.name. All right, that's how you would do it. And then of course, and then it would be folder, because the folder again specifying which folder to download from, and I need this over here to know the file name and the folder where to go download the files to. So that's kind of where this is taken care of. So the last function that we're going to create is going to be called get files by pattern. All right, so this is going to take a pattern. It's going to take a pattern argument and then a folder. Again, the pattern means we're looking for a specific whatever keyword we're searching for. It's going to try to find that in all the file names in SharePoint, and only the file that have a match, it's going to retrieve those, you know, download those files pretty much. So this would be same thing, would be files list SharePoint underscore get files list folder, because I got to specify the folder. Once I get that, same concept, right? I'm going to do an iteration for files in files list, and this is where I'm going to do my pattern matching, right? Where regular expression comes in. So it'll be if re search. That's what it is. I'm doing search. Then I'm going to pass in my pattern. Oops. Pattern. What the hell, did I spell it wrong? Damn it, I did not spell it right over here. All right. So it'd be pattern, then of course file.name. So again, the pattern being I'm looking for the keyword cells. That's the pattern. Let me just call it pattern name or pattern value or keyword. Better, yeah, that's probably better. Let's call it keyword. And then ultimately, I'm looking for that keyword inside the file name. And if there's a match, it will return true. That's where the regular expression.search does. If it doesn't match, it returns false. So in Python, when you do an if, some value, like let's say you do if true, it will execute the code underneath. If false, it does not execute the code. And that's why what I have it will, again, I'm talking about for them people that are new, but just trying to kind of provide some additional knowledge in that area. So in this case, if there is a keyword, there is a hit, there's a match, then I'm going to do get file. And get file is going to want the file name. Then it's also going to want the folder. And that's it. That's how it's able to do that. So the final piece is going to be when we run the file, we want this to run. So by default, the name of it is called main because this is a full file that we're running. And because it's main and this is true, it's going to execute the code right below it. So if you ever seen this, but you're not sure, like, why is that there and so on, that's why. Anytime you run the file, that file has a name of __ main. And because it has that name, we build logic where this matches the __ main, it's going to run the code underneath automatically. And this is where we're going to now build some logic. If file name is not, right, is not none, which means they provided a file name as an argument, right? Kind of going back. Whoever, if you're the user, you provide a file name. You do provide a file name, then what it's going to do is going to say, okay, go ahead and just automatically execute the get file. And in this case, it would be file name as one argument. And then it would be folder name. All right. So else if the next thing is going to be file name pattern, right? If that is not none, again, which means that you provided a pattern. There's a pattern there associated, some kind of value that's an actual pattern. Then what we're doing here, we're going to say, okay, go ahead and get files by pattern. That's what we want to run. And then we're going to pass in the file name pattern variable, and then the folder name. All right. And then else is again whatever remains. It's going to be the get files, right? So in this case, it will be folder name only. So that's it. So now if we run it, you know, it'll. What I need to do here, let's create a new folder. And I'm going to call this storage, because that's where I want to see files. I expect files to populate and show up there, this folder, if everything's successful. So now that we have got this file in order, this looks to be in order. Okay, so the only thing I need to do, let me provide my email and password, and then we could test it out and run it. And again, I'm connecting to this SharePoint site here, and I'm going to be trying to download files from this 2022 folder. That's my goal here, right? So ultimately, these files should get downloaded. You could tell they're different type of files. You have CSV and then one Excel. So let's see if this works. Let me go ahead and put in my credentials, and we'll do a test, guys, and see if this worked out. Let's see if it works. I know it's going to work, but let's see if it works the first try, right? That's always the thing. Can we get it to work the first try? Most of the time, not, but we'll see. All right, cool. So now what I'm gonna do is, again, remember this folder is empty here, right? There's no files in here. I'm connected to that project. So let's go ahead and run it. I'm gonna do Python, and I'm gonna run download.py. So again, going back to, we have 4 arguments we need to pass in, right? 4 arguments. SharePoint file name. This one needs to be used. What I should have noted here as well is, if all files will be downloaded, then set this value as none, right? So the reason why we want to set it as none is because it needs some kind of key value. It needs some kind of argument. It can't just be blank. So same thing with this guy. When all files are going to be downloaded, when not all files, when no pattern match files are required to be downloaded, then set this value to none as well. So it will be none. So now let's go to it, right? So what I'm going to do here is my folder name that I'm going to be looking for. It's going to be, again, not documents. Do not put documents. It's going to be data 2022. All right, so just keep that in mind. That's what it's going to be. So I'm looking for data /2022. All right. My next argument here is going to be, where do I want to save this files to, right? So it's right here. This is it. I want to copy pass. Let me just make sure. Yep, this is it. So this is the pass that I wanted. I'm going to put space. Again, remember, this is argument number 1 by default when you run a Python file. Then this is, which is index 0. Then of course you have argument 2, which is index 1. Then this will be my third argument, which is index 2. Put it in double quotes, space, and then I'm not specifying a specific file because I want all the files. I just don't want one file. I want all files. And I'm not doing pattern matches either in this case. So this would be none, space, none. All right. So now let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. Ooh. So this is odd. Why they're not finding it? Alright guys, so what we're gonna do next is, so I figured out the issue. I don't know how I missed this, man. So we need to install one more package. There's 2 packages we're installing for this project. One of them being the Office 365. Then the next one is going to be the pip install Django for the environment variables, right? So once we get that installed, which is now installed, yeah, we should be good now. So then let's go ahead and run it. So I'm gonna run again, Python download.py, the folder in SharePoint where we want to download files from. Then of course where we want to save it to, none, because we're not doing single file download or any pattern match download. We want to download all the files. Let's go ahead and run it. All right, it's running. That's good. Oh, what happened? Oh, you know what? Damn, I know what happened. Yep. So now let me go back to my download. Where's my download at? So this is gonna be, as I download files, I get back an object. So you know what? This may be something I could fix here under downloads. So it would be file. Let's see. What I could do here would be dot context. So again, I just want the context data only, not the full response. So that's what I should have done here. So now let's run it again. Cross fingers, make sure it works. All right, has an errored out. Let's see what do we haven't stored. Oh, boom! There we go. We got our files, and it's done. Cool. So you could tell we were able to connect, and we downloaded all the files to the folder that we specified, right? And it worked like a charm. It worked the way I expected it to work. So let's go ahead and delete these. Move to recycle bin. Now that we have that empty, now let's try it one more time, but let's do pattern match. Right, same thing, same folder, like same location in SharePoint, the data 2022, which is damn, where is it at? That's not it. Oh, I have it over here, my bad. So again, data 2020, not documents. That's, you're not going to specify documents, only, the starting point, which is data 2022. And then single file, still none, but my wildcard I do want to specify. I want to specify January, right? And the reason why January, because if I go back to it, we have one file, or better yet, customer. I just want the file with the word customer in it. That's actually better. Customer. So that's what I'm looking for. And hit enter, and let's see what we get. Boom, one file, 2, 3. Boom, that's exactly what I wanted, 3 files. And we did, no errors. So again, the pattern match worked like a charm. We specify a specific pattern name that we're looking for, and it worked. So again, this is a update from a previous video that I have made, but I'm using a different package. I'm using Office 365, REST, API, Python, or Cloud, whatever. It's a long name, but nevertheless, I'm using that package. I like it. I've been playing around with it as well, and I do like this this package. I think it's more feature rich than SharePoint. So this is part 1. I'm gonna be making more videos, and what I'm gonna be doing is adding on to this project, right? Instead of having multiple repos of different like examples to download or upload or whatever, I'm gonna have this one repo and I'm gonna be adding on to it. So that's why I have a download folder. The next video I will create an upload file, in this case called download. I probably should have called it download. I am going to change it. I need to change it. I'm going to change the file name to download files, and then I'll create another one that will be called upload files, and then so on and so on, right? Just kind of add on to it, and then you'll see this class, SharePoint class, I would add on. I'm going to add more functions to it. Instead of just having a download function, I'm going to add a upload function, and so on and so on. So again, guys, I'm going to be adding on to it. Hopefully this helps out. Hopefully this helps out. Again, guys, give me a like, give me a follow. I appreciate it. There'll be more videos to come. Peace.